Stories that time forgot.
A wire barely thicker than a human hair is the only thing separating the modern world from an absolute technological blackout. And control over that lifeline is currently trapped in a silent war thousands of meters high in the Andes. This is the battle for Chilean copper and the green future. Santiago, Chile, 2026. What you are about to discover at the end of this story will completely change your understanding of the resource wars and geopolitics covered on this channel. Because the transition to clean energy isn't a walk in the park, it is a cutthroat fight for the new, red oil. Imagine you're standing right there, on the edge of the Chuquicamata open pit, the largest man-made excavation on the planet. The air is so dry it stings your throat, and the sun beats down with a violence that feels like it's melting the rocks. Beneath your feet, the earth opens up into a colossal amphitheater of ochre and reddish hues stretching for miles. You don't hear the silence of the desert. Instead, you hear the constant roar of haul trucks, two-story-high metal monsters moving tons of rock every few minutes. Chile holds nearly a third of the world's reserves of this metal, and in a world fleeing from carbon, every gram of this mineral has become a chess piece on a board where global superpowers do and take no for an answer. As we've discovered in other cases from Shelf E here on Stories Time Forgot, controlling a single element can determine the rise or fall of an entire nation. The first act of this story begins with a cruel paradox. To save the planet from climate change, we need to destroy massive chunks of its surface. An average electric car requires 4 times more copper than an internal combustion vehicle. Wind turbines and solar panels rely on miles of high-purity wiring to function. The world has decided to go green, but that decision has painted a bullseye on the chest of the Chilean mountains. Boardrooms in Beijing and Washington have stopped eyeing Middle Eastern oil with the same intensity as before, refocusing their satellites on the Atacama Desert. You might wonder how such an ancient metal is now the most critical technology. The answer lies in its thermal and electrical conductivity, a property modern engineering hasn't been able to replicate at a low cost. But extracting it today is much harder than it was 50 years ago. The ore grade, meaning the amount of pure copper per ton of rock, has plummeted. What used to be a treasure right at the surface now requires digging deeper, consuming more water, and burning more energy. By the end of this act, you should know that while geologists calculate reserves, a much more bureaucratic and dangerous shadow is beginning to loom over the government offices in Santiago. Because copper doesn't just attract engineers. It attracts the architects of invisible power. Have you ever wondered why your electricity bill or the price of your next vehicle depends on a strike at a mine 4,000 meters up? In this second act, the tension moves from the open pits to air-conditioned boardrooms. China, which consumes more than half of the world's copper, has launched an aggressive acquisition strategy. They aren't just buying the metal. They're buying the mines, the smelters, and the logistics routes. This has set off every alarm bell at the United States State Department. The battle is no longer just about the price per ton on the London Metal Exchange, but about who holds the veto power over the supply. Picture the scene in a luxury hotel in the Chilean capital, where diplomats from both blocs try to seduce local ministers with promises of infrastructure investment. Chile is caught in a geopolitical crossfire. If the country leans too far to one side, it risks sanctions or blockades from the other. It's a tightrope walk where balance is the only way to survive. Water has become the third protagonist in this drama. In the driest desert in the world, mining companies need massive amounts of water to process the ore. This has sparked a brutal conflict with local communities and farmers who see their wells running dry. The technical solution has been building desalination plants on the coast and pumping water thousands of meters uphill. This drives up the cost and consumes an amount of electricity that makes the green label questionable, to say the least. As we know from our research on this same shelf regarding resource wars, when water and money compete, the result is usually an indelible scar on the map. But what's coming in the third act is what should truly disturb you, as it involves a change in the rules of the game that no one saw coming. In the third act, we face backdoor nationalization and the rise of resource nationalism. The Chilean government, pressured by internal social demands, has sought to increase taxes and royalties on foreign companies. This has caused an earthquake in international financial markets. Large corporations are threatening to move their capital to countries like the Congo or Australia. However, Chile knows its copper is of a quality that's hard to match. It's a global-scale poker game. The viewer must understand that the green future isn't just about ecology. It's about who foots the bill for that transformation. The energy transition is in reality one of the largest transfers of wealth in history, moving from countries that consume technology to those that possess the raw materials. The fate of Chilean copper is tied to the stability of the global power grid. If the supply is interrupted by a political conflict or social collapse, the electric car revolution will grind to a halt. There won't be enough batteries, there won't be enough chargers, and the net zero emissions goals for 2050 will become worthless scraps of paper. The final paradox is that the country fueling the dream of a smokeless world suffers the pollution and exhaustion of its most fragile ecosystems on its own soil. When you look at the wires around your house, remember that every one of them is a piece of a Chilean mountain torn from the earth under unbearable geopolitical pressure. Coming soon, in this same section of Stories Time Forgot, we will delve into an even deeper mystery with the episode titled, The Tin Control That Broke Entire Nations, where we'll discover how a seemingly simple metal humbled the most powerful empires of the 20th century. The real question lingering in the thin Andean air is this: are we actually saving the planet, or are we simply swapping oil for copper? The green future has a reddish tint and a price that perhaps not everyone is willing to pay. Subscribe so the system notifies you when we unearth the next piece of the puzzle and continue exploring the invisible forces shaping our reality.